My name is Meridian Grace, and I'd like to welcome you to our Awakening Health show today. A few minutes ago, I was sitting here thinking, well, what should I talk about today? Should I talk about ketosis and fasting? Should I talk about things you can do for yourself to support your health at home? Should I talk more about the GAPS diet and gut and brain health? And I realized if I talk to you about some things that are in common with GAPS and things that you can do at home for yourself, that might be one of the most beneficial things we could do right now. So that's what I'm going to do. This is actually a continuation of GAPS, but it also is a number of the things that both Natasha and I have found over the years, independently sometimes and some from her, that really make a huge difference when we're working with ourselves and our children to help upregulate our health and give us that quality of life that we're really looking for. So one of the first things is that most of us bathe and we put our children in a bathtub. And of course we want to use the cleanest water we possibly can. If I was an activist, I would be out there doing everything I could to get rid of the fluoride in our water. But if you have access to water from a well that doesn't have fluoride in it, all the better. Or if you live in one of those progressive places where there's no fluoride in the water, that would be awesome. We can remove chlorine to a great degree with different filters, but it's pretty hard to do that with fluoride. So I'd like to encourage you to use some bath therapies, and they're wonderful. If you happen to be a very stressed out person, an anxious person, your children are super hyper, one of the things that you can do is to use an Epsom salts bath. Most people don't realize that Epsom salts is actually magnesium and sulfur, magnesium sulfate. Sulfur is a very important component in our bodies to help us to remove heavy metals and toxins out of the body. And magnesium is incredibly relaxing and calming for most of us. There are a few body types where that's not true, but for the most part, magnesium is incredibly calming. So it's really worth trying an Epsom salts bath. When the children are particularly hyper agitated, having difficulty with sleeping. For you, if you have headaches or muscle aches or cramping, one wonderful way to get magnesium into the body is through a Epsom salts bath. A lot of people are orally taking magnesium, and that's can be very, very helpful for us, particularly after the age of 50 or after menopause and andropause for men. Or if you happen to have cramps in your legs, that's a pretty good sign that you could use magnesium. Another way that magnesium has found to be very helpful is if you're one of those people who gets a racing heartbeat, you could try magnesium and see if it calms your heart, and you might just have a magnesium deficiency. And a lovely way to help bring up that magnesium level is by taking an Epsom salts bath. We start with very small amounts for children, no more than a cup in a bathtub, and if you have a very sensitive child, you might want to start with even a half a cup, or even just a foot bath, where you use a couple tablespoons of magnesium in something that your child's feet will fit into, and tell them stories or play with their toes while you have them doing a little foot bath, and see if that helps to calm them down any, or if they have any negative reactions. And if they don't have a negative reaction, then you could move forward to a full, bathtub or whatever you bathe your children in, depending upon their age and size, with the Epsom salts. So Epsom salts can be just a truly wonderful, wonderful thing. And Natasha highly recommends Epsom salts baths. There's a number of other baths that can be very beneficial for us. Salt baths can also be very helpful. And a salt bath can help to help support us with electrolytes, all of the electrolytes, and help us with being able to retain fluid. It's really important that we're not dehydrated if we want to support brain function in particular, but really all of our organs need to be hydrated. We need to be hydrated. So salt baths can be wonderful, and they also really help with radiation. So using a salt bath with like kosher salt is a really good idea. Another type of bath that can be very helpful is a baking soda bath. And a baking soda really helps with toxins, to remove toxins from the body, and alkalinization. You know, most people wrongly think that eating alkaline foods will make them alkaline. The processes in our body have to do, especially when we eat sugars, and white flour and things like that will create an acid environment, as will unhealthy and too much protein in the body. But it's not that the foods themselves do it, it's the biochemical processes that take place in the body. But the baking soda is wonderful. We know we can use it for odors and things of that nature, and part of what it does is it breaks those down and breaks down toxins. So, you know, we can also do the same kind of gentle exploration with our children, with little foot baths and then into full baths with baking soda. One of my favorite baths that Natasha doesn't talk about, but people who are really involved with looking at answers for cancer and who are really interested in oxygenation, also consider using food-grade hydrogen peroxide baths. And I actually use 35% food-grade hydrogen peroxide, and I'll place a cup of that in a bathtub and sit in the tub for 20 minutes. And that's a way that if you don't have ozone available to you, ozone types of treatments, you can use to enjoy a calming, soothing bath. You'll probably notice that there'll be all of this dead skin cells on the top of the tub when you get out of the tub. And that bath will have really supported your oxygenation. I really recommend that you take that type of bath before you go to bed, because our sleep time is the time that hopefully we're going to be parasympathetic, and we're going to be supporting the process of healing and rebuilding and refurbishing and really going into a nice deep sleep. And this bath should be very helpful with that, as is true also of Epsom salts for almost all body types. So those can be so very, very helpful for you. Another thing that I like to talk to people about, whether they're doing the GAPS program or not, is the benefit of something called a GAPS milkshake. And Natasha talks about these in the program, particularly for people that have issues with constipation, and also people who have problems with gallstones. And this particular drink is very, very helpful in supporting the proper bile flow, as well as supporting the proper movement, the peristalsis of your bowels, and making sure that they have enough lubrication. So this drink, what one does is takes a high quality pasture-raised chicken egg or duck egg or goose egg from birds that are not fed glyphosate or Roundup or any type of nasty pesticide on their grain. And you take one of those eggs and you can crack it into a bowl. And then the next thing is a high quality sour cream from grass-fed cows. And if you're lucky enough to have access to raw sour cream, that would be wonderful. Or fresh creme fraiche made with grass-fed raw dairy, again, would be wonderful, raw cream. But the idea is sour cream or creme fraiche that we then take a quarter of a cup and add that to our mixture. And then some green drink. Now, for me personally, I'm always doing my best to stay away from any extra carbs. So I don't use any fruit juice in my green drink. I just use vegetables. And the vegetables I like to use are fennel bulb and cucumber and celery and parsley. And for my body type, I like to add ginger. And you can also add a little bit of a turmeric rhizome. It looks a lot like ginger, but it's orange inside and very thin. And I like to make a juice of those. And then I will sweeten my drink with green leaf stevia. Stevia is an herb that if you get it in its green leaf form, it's totally natural. It's been used for thousands of years to help support blood sugar balance and to heal unhealthy pancreases. There's numerous types of stevia on the market. There's white powder, which obviously has been, greatly processed, liquids that have been processed, but there's also just green leaf stevia liquid. So especially if you're working with an autistic child, I highly recommend that if you're going to use stevia, that it be a green leaf stevia. And you can use that to sweeten the drink instead of fruit juice. Particularly if your child is having issues with blood sugar. And what we do is we just will blend that either with a wire whisk or shake it up in a jar. I think you're gonna need a wire whisk though with the egg. I have a wonderful blender that I use, so I typically will do that. And you drink that twice a day on an empty stomach. So that becomes like a snack meal. And this will greatly help your gallbladder, your liver, and your digestion overall, as well as support people who have issues with constipation. If you're somebody who is on the other side of the spectrum where you have looser stool, instead of using the sour cream or the creme fraiche, you would use a kefir instead, made with whole fat raw milk. And one of these days I'll be showing you how to make that in a program, but you can see that online. I'm sure if you put in looking for a video on YouTube for how to make homemade kefir, you'll see how incredibly simple it is. So this drink is very helpful, and it's one of those things you can do for yourself. It's not a medication, it's real food, and it will support you immensely in keeping really healthy. The other thing is breathing. And when we breathe, where we breathe in 5 and exhale for 5, we're balancing our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous systems. The parasympathetic nervous system and the vagal activity of the body, which really is important for our digestion, is supported by having a longer exhale. So what you can do is start out by breathing in for whatever number is comfortable for you. 3, 4, 5, some people 10, 15. But breathing out longer. So at least 1 or 2 more seconds of exhale. A lot of yogic practices will actually even have you breathe out twice as long as you breathe in, which is profoundly supportive to meditation, which happens when we're in a very deep parasympathetic state. Or I should say meditation is a very deep parasympathetic state. And that's one of the little tools that they've used. And as I've been studying neuroplasticity, I discovered that that's one of the little tools we can use also to support people who are anxious and hyper to get into a more relaxed state. So if we have somebody who needs to relax, we'll of course encourage them to breathe, to do little exercises where you breathe out more than you breathe in. And the ideal place to do that is sitting outside on the ground or lying down on the ground with the sun overhead. And that way you'll be getting the wonderful radiation from the sun and the wonderful mothering energy from Mother Earth and the magnetics from Ma as you are working with balancing your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. So breathing exercises are also a wonderful thing to do. Another thing that very few people have heard of, and when I first heard of it myself, I thought it sounded crazy, but it made total sense when you look at the probably 200, 300, 400-year-old science of hydrotherapy. And that is, if your baby has a runny nose, or even if your baby doesn't have a runny nose, bringing your newborns home, you can start doing this little practice daily, and you'll probably save yourself and your baby all the green gunkies that are so common these days with little ones, where they have green mucus and snot and ear infections and all the rest of it. And the purpose of this little exercise for adults or children is to help to bring circulation and move toxins out of the head down into the lower parts of the body where it can be broken down properly into the lymphatics, into the liver, and things of that nature. And you do it by hot and cold. So basically what we do is we might take, if they're babies, we might take their little feet and take a nice warm, or pretty warm, like super warm, like almost hot but not uncomfortably hot washcloth, and just wipe their feet. And then take a pair of cotton socks and dip them in cool water and wring them out. And then put those cool cotton socks on your baby's feet, and then take a pair of wool socks and put them on top of the damp, cool socks, and put them to bed. And when they get up in the morning, their socks will be dry, and typically anything that's going on in the head will be gone. This is wonderful to know about sinus infections. This is great to know about headaches. This is wonderful to know if you tend to have rhinitis or any blockage in the ears, the eyes, the head, or whatever. It supports circulation. And one of the ancient things we've been told about is that wherever we don't have circulation is where we have our health issues. So this is one way to pull toxins out of the head. And it's a wonderful thing to do with all of our babies and young children. And they actually really like it. You're not using ice cold socks or anything like that. You're just, using cool socks, and it's like magic. Their socks are dry when they get up in the morning. So that's an old naturopathic trick that comes from Europe, and one of my favorite naturopathic professors talks about this, Dr. Tom. I believe he was teaching in Portland, Oregon for many years, and it's something that he has moms do and adults do whenever they have issues with their heads. Now, the other thing that you can do is make a purchase, if you don't already have one, of a shower head that can come off. And once again, we're going to use this principle of hot and cold and supporting circulation. So heat causes expansion and cold causes contraction. So if you go back and forth between hot and cold, you can support getting circulation into areas where you have pain, and that's when there's a constriction typically. So if your knee's hurting, you can do 15 seconds of hot as you can stand it, and then 15 seconds of as cold as you can stand it. And you don't even have to do ice cold water or anything like that. You can just go back and forth to the level that you're comfortable with. And you do this anywhere from 3 to 7 times. 15 seconds of hot, 15 seconds of cold, 15 seconds of hot, 15 seconds of cold. And I typically like to end in cold, particularly if there's swelling or inflammation. And if it just feels like it's stiff and blocked, then I would like to end with hot. And I also, every morning, that's the type of shower I take. And when I first heard about that, I thought that would be awful to have to use cold water. But again, you start with whatever level of coolness you're comfortable with, even if it's just 5 degrees less than the hot. And you go back and forth between 15 seconds of hot, 15 seconds of cold, 15 seconds of hot, 15 seconds of cold. And I find that when you get to the point when you can handle really cold, it's amazing how good it feels. The first blast of cold might be a little bit shocking, but the second time you're using the cold, it feels comfortable. And the third, I just leave it on for typically 2 minutes or more of just cold because it feels so good. And that is stimulating my body to bring its own resources together when it's cold like that. One of the things that we discover in one of the treatments or one of the test procedures that I do with people is called regulation thermometry, but I'd like to call it thermal bioscans. And it's based on the principle that if our bodies are working well, if they're exposed to cold, the heat will go internal to the organs to support the organs functioning and upregulating the organs. So that's the idea behind this. When you do the cold, it supports the organs in getting hotter. And it's interesting, when you do cold water on the brain, it just does just the opposite. When you do it on the head, it takes the excess heat that could be inflammatory out of the brain and brings it to the surface of the face and the head so that all of the different sensory organs are hyper aware. So that's one of the reasons why the hot cold is so incredibly beneficial for us. And in one of our next shows, I'll be showing you how profound this type of testing is for understanding whether your body is hyper functioning or in a state that's autoimmune or inflammatory, or if you have parts of your body that are degenerating and or completely blocked, where your body is unable to get benefit. And by working with this hot and cold therapy, you could support that, as well as, of course, looking at different foods, herbs, homeopathics, biotherapeutic drainage types of products that will help to upregulate those organs and tissues. And that kind of testing is profound to help us see where there are potential neoplastic cells that we call cancer cells, or tumors, or blockages. And we can get a good idea of an area that's blocked and needs support way before any type of tumor could actually show up. And then we can help the body to prevent that tumor happening at all. So I really, really love that test and feel like it's something that everyone should get. And it's a test that does no harm, like our women who are perpetually getting mammography, where they're being exposed to high levels of radiation and trauma at the same time. So that's another thing that we should be very aware of, and that is that trauma to tissue needs to be taken care of quickly and supported. One of the things we know about breast cancer is that women who have had a blow to the breast, like taken a baseball to the breast or something like that and had a black and blue mark, if they end up with a breast cancer later in their lives, typically it'll be in that location. And so one of the things I love to have parents keep in their personal arsenal, something easy to do, is to have homeopathic arnica pellets in their home. And if there is a trauma to soft tissue of any kind, to just take some arnica for a few days. And that would help to prevent having a tumor eventually show up in that particular tissue. So that's an inexpensive and wonderful thing to just have at home to use for that purpose. There are so many things that we can do, but one of the most important, we talked a little bit about breathing. Next to breathing and making sure that we have fresh air to breathe is drinking water. and we all need to be hydrated. And one of the things that we've discovered, especially in living in hot climates like we do here in Austin in the summer, is the importance of electrolytes. And you can get those electrolytes very easily by adding a little bit of a high quality salt, not the type of table salt that we typically see that's white, but a pink salt like Himalayan sea salt, or a Celtic sea salt. It's a gray colored salt. And then there are also many really interesting salts that come from India, sulfur salts that are yellow, and they have black salts. But the two that are really easy for us to get our hands on are the Celtic sea salt and the Himalayan sea salt. So just taking a little bit of that, either on your tongue directly, or adding about 2 teaspoons to a gallon of water, and then sipping on that water all day is a really good thing to do. And to know how much to drink, if you are not being real physically active, you would take what would be your ideal body weight and divide that by 2. So let's say your ideal body weight is 100 pounds, then you would drink a minimum of 50 ounces of water a day. And please realize that if you are a coffee drinker or drinking lots of caffeinated drinks, you need to add twice that amount of water into your diet, because those are dehydrating types of drinks. So getting some of the foundations like sunlight, like good quality air, doing a breathing exercise that will support you in being either calmer or more focused and more energy, depending upon what you need. Our magical baths and our little warming socks. And one last little piece to throw in there, which is a castor oil pack, where you use a good quality castor oil, and you place that into a cotton flannel and place that on the organs of your body that are feeling like they need extra love and support. That'll increase your lymphatic flow to those areas. That's another wonderful thing to do, besides, of course, getting a daily exercise that you enjoy, that makes you happy, like dancing. Turn on your favorite music and just dance the way your body wants to dance. So I hope today I've given you some ideas of things that you can do for yourself that are enjoyable, and things that can become a habit and help you to be healthier and reduce those doctor bills. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us.